So you know what's kind of hilarious? Is I did actually like this movie. I liked it quite a lot. But at the same time, I was also incredibly disappointed. I guess I should just say right now that I did like it, just in case someone looks at the title and they're like, oh man, I guess he just hates it. But that's not, that's not the case. And I wanted it to succeed, I wanted it to be good, but you can't just wish for stuff. So it's probably pretty easy to tell that I'm not one that usually makes videos, eh? I was originally gonna make videos about Amazon's waste of time, but I guess I decided I should probably make this one first, just because the original movie Twister was it's my favorite movie, so of course I have something to say about quote-unquote sequel, And P.S. This is not a review of Twister or Twisters. And there's probably going to be spoilers, so, this is kind of just me talking about it, That's it. So, it's like I was saying, I was pretty disappointed. And I gotta say, one reason why is because despite the title, and the font that the title's in, and one singular scene, actually more like just a prop, really, this movie just doesn't have anything to do with the original in any way, shape, or form. Like, at all. And so I already called it sequel, a couple seconds ago, but it's not a sequel. It just isn't. It's kind of like a cross between a remake and a reboot. And of course, contrary to what Glenn Powell says, the story of Twisters is a recreation of the original. It just 100% is. And yet, you'd never be able to tell that it was made by the same studio or anything. How about that? So, calling it a reboot and a remake at the same time sounds kind of confusing, right? Well, let me just tell you what I think reboots and remakes are. And sequels, I guess. Because sequels are easy, I'll start with that. So, they're pretty easy. It's just a direct continuation of whatever the first movie was, huh? Like, going from Terminator to Terminator 2 or something like that. Easy. Remakes, on the other hand, they're trying to, tell the same story in almost the same way. Pretty much if you've seen the original, then you've seen the remake, essentially. And vice versa, even though the remake is usually worse in almost every way. And then reboots they're kind of like remakes, except reboots kind of pretend like the other one never happened. Like, it's pretty obvious going into a remake what you're getting into. But a reboot is like, we'll take some things from here and there and then do whatever the hell else we want to do. So you could see how you'll see how Twisters kind of fits into both of those, but not sequel. One of the first thoughts I had when I came out of the theaters was that it's almost like if you had another studio that wanted to remake Twisters, but they didn't have any of the rights to it. And so they just took the story from it, and the characters kind of, and changed everything around just enough to where it was legally distinct. But it's still essentially the same movie, So yeah, it's like, I bet some people I know people are gonna doubt me when I say they're the same movie.
You doubt me? Well, come on, to the crime lab.
So the start of Twisters is so close to the original one that people notice it. And so that's a pretty good sign, first of all. So you got Kate, losing all her friends instantly. Just to establish that she's, going through all kinds of loss because of the tornado. Just like Jo with her father, in the first one. And actually, this first part, when I saw it in the theaters, I was like, oh, so it's gonna be a copy-paste job, right? Just like A New Hope and The Force Awakens. I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this first scene. And, okay, so then Kate, who's moved on from chasing tornadoes, just like Bill, she gets roped back into chasing, for a limited time only. Bill gave Jo 1 day, I think, and then Kate gives Javi, which is the only other person that survived, she gives him 1 week. So obviously that's, identical. And then, oh yeah, this one has Corpo Storm Chasers just like the first one too. As if that couldn't be funny enough, because, whatever. Anyway, yeah, they've got a Corpo group. They ride in all white vehicles, though, instead of all black ones, like Jonas's. And the twist with that, though, is Kate actually goes with the Corpo group. Javier, pretty sure that's his full name. Javi, that's what everyone calls him. She goes with Javi's group, and he's with the Corpos. He actually kind of got all that together. So that's the twist there. She's with the Corpo group. And then she also has the tornado sense, like, the spider sense, but it's the tornado sense, just like Bill, Where they're, like, driving somewhere, she sees, like, a shift in the wind or something, just like Bill's looking at the tornado saying, man, it's going to shift its track. And then she's like, oh, no, we got to go to this way. This one's going to be better, The other group, I call them the ragtag group. But, you could call them the streamer group. I don't know what you'd call them. I just call them the ragtag group. But they even have a stand-in for Melissa, funny enough. In the form of a reporter from the UK. And he's really just there so that they can explain tornado stuff, even though they're all storm chasers, so they'd all know this stuff already. That's why he's there, that's it. So the first tornado that both teams are after, the Tornado Wrangler, him, he just bursts out of the, onto the road, just like Bill and them do. In his old red, I almost said Red Ford, kill me. In his old red Ram. And I do appreciate that they at least went for an old red Dodge Ram in that. And when he burst out, it's kind of almost identical. It seemed shot by shot for me, but it probably wasn't. Okay, here's the twist here too, is the first part. Is she gets like PTSD about chasing tornadoes, whereas Joe doesn't, so, yeehaw, there's a difference. Okay, so the second time they go after tornadoes, it splits into sisters, just like, in the first one, except they call them twins here, just to make sure they don't allude to the original in any way. And then, just like the original one, the Kate's main character team go to the correct tornado, and the other team doesn't. Even though she's part of the Corpo group, And then, after this, they all go through a destroyed town. It kind of is like Wakita-ish, as far as the scene goes. And I'm like, of course there's going to be destroyed towns and stuff in a tornado movie. Of course you expect that. But it didn't really move the story along as much as you would think it would. Because it's just trying to show, like, she was making fun of him for selling t-shirts and all that. And then, they could have talked or whatever, but then she's like, oh man, look, they're selling t-shirts. And then when they go in the destroyed town, they're giving out water and stuff for free. They're helping people. Like, obviously, It was really kind of tangential to the story when you see what happens later on. Oh, and speaking of moving on, the next one's the rodeo scene. And it is pretty great, Of course, it's eeping off the original drive-in scene. And yeah, that's what it's a copy of, the drive-in scene. And that's the only other scene that everyone's like, oh yeah, that's like the other movie, isn't it? Because it's at night, the tornado sneaks up on them, it's the two main characters and, some tangential ones. They have to shelter in place and everything. Like, it's so blatant everyone knows that this scene is a copy of that one. Except not as good. It's still pretty good, but it's not as good as the original, in my opinion. And then after this, because I guess she's kind of, the PTSD is kind of rising again in her. She's like saying, oh man, the tornado took everything from me, because all her friends died instantly at the beginning. And it's pretty much like Joe on the hill with the sensors saying that tornadoes missed this house and missed that house and came after her. And then later on, she's, she wanted to stop doing the science thing. She wants to stop a tornado. That's the other difference. They're trying to stop tornadoes here. They're not trying to just study them to make better warnings or whatever. Even though they sure could have used warnings, In that rodeo scene I just mentioned. Like they do all have smartphones because it's in modern times, and the tornado warning comes off like a minute before the tornado comes there, so, thanks. But anyway, they're trying to stop tornadoes, and so she had this plan to do that, and that's what happened in the beginning. It went wrong, and then she's like, no, I can't do that anymore. But then she's like, I guess I can, because he said some stuff to cheer her up. And so when they're both working together, because he's like, wow, this is a good idea. And they discover the secret formula that they need to stop tornadoes, because it needed more than just her one step before. They go to... You remember the scene in the first movie where they're in Destroyed Wakita at Meg's house? And Joe discovers how to make Dorothy fly? It's kind of reminiscent of that. I don't want to pretend like that's shot for shot or anything, but it is the story beat of them figuring out how to make their thing work, because it wasn't working before. Easy, huh? And then next, they're going to El Reno. You know, it's pretty... You know, if you know tornado chasers, you know what El Reno is all about. But anyways, they're playing the corpos off like they don't care, and they're just there for the job and everything. And I forgot to mention, but the second-in-command guy even looks like Jonas. He's, like, dressed up like him with the sunglasses and everything. It's kind of hilarious. But anyway, the difference between the corpos here and the original is that Javi, which is, like, in charge, does eventually have a heart and goes to help El Reno. And and none of the corpos die, so, you know, spoiler alert. None of them die, just like they do in the original. Jonas, anyways. And then, after this, because we're still in El Reno, this is like the end, we get this movie theater scene that's shot pretty darn similarly to the pipes at the end of the first one, where the tornado's sucking them up. Except in this one, instead of the tornado dissipating on its own, it's because Kate actually destroys it with the secret formula, you know? Yeah, she has the Tornado Wrangler's truck, which they rigged with all these chemicals. You know, they're stopping the tornado with, like, you know, 10 barrels of chemicals, which, you know, I don't know about that one, okay? It's supposed to be the F5. The EF5, excuse me. So they're trying to stop an EF5 with, like, 10 barrels of chemicals and some rockets with other chemicals in them. So, you know, I don't know about that one. I just don't know about that one. So, oh, and speaking of that... That's the end. That's the ending part, that she stops the tornado, and all's well that ends well. But guess what? Even the truck survives. So the truck, his truck has drills into the ground, which is fine. I kind of like the drills. But like none of the windows are broken. I think one headlight got busted, and that was it. And she supposedly inside of this EF5 doesn't even get tossed or anything. Like. You know, I mean, you know anything about tornado footage, like, you're just kind of rolling your eyes in the back of your skull with that one. But, you know, whatever. I guess the truck not getting destroyed is an inversion from the original, so I'll give him that. I'll give him points for, for originality there, huh? Alright, and then finally, Kate decides, you know, I want to chase tornadoes again. I'm not going back to my old job. And that's identical to Bill, pretty much. You can tell at the end of the original, Bill decides to stop going to be a weatherman and just starts to chase tornadoes again with Joe. And that they got back together. Oh yeah, that's the other thing that they did differently is, you know, they were gonna have Kate and the Tornado Wrangler get together at the end romantically, and, you know, that didn't happen. Whew. So yeah, you can see while it's not, like, literally exactly identical, it pretty much the story is. Even if a couple things are out of place. And, so pretty much, Kate is an amalgamation of Bill and Joe at the same time. So she gets most of their storylines together, if, they happen at all, because, you know, those two were in love, and all that. And that subplot's excised. But then the Tornado Wrangler also has some of Bill's quirks and stuff. So, like, the Tornado Wrangler himself has the tornado sense too. I guess it's just not as powerful as Kate's, because, you know, she got to the tornado and he went to the wrong one, you know, the second time. And the Tornado Wrangler's character himself is, imagine Bill Paxton's characters from both the original Twister and from Spy Kids 2, and you, like, combined them into one entity, and that's pretty much the Tornado Wrangler. So that's pretty funny. And, of course, the UK guy was Melissa. Yeah, except not in the romantic ways. So, it's like, excuse me when I say that they're pretty much the same movie, except, if someone else made it. I mean, so everything was pretty much there, except they didn't acknowledge anything from the first at all. The one scene I was saying before was Dorothy. In the very beginning, when all the friends die instantly, they were using a Dorothy 5. So there you go, that's the title of the first movie. Yay. Great job, that's really a sequel. And when the trailers came out for this first at the Super Bowl, which I coincidentally was actually watching, I was just like, it was a mix of huh? And why? And also, maybe. Because, I was maybe, because, I don't know, it's possible it could have been good, of course. I mean, the trailer just showed, the teaser just showed a couple scenes of a tornado and a couple of scenes with Dorothy, actually. And so I was like, well, I don't know, maybe. Because the title is Twisters, so it's got to be continuation of the first one, right? You'd think. But then I was like, but how are they going to continue the story from 30 years ago? Because it obviously was set in modern day. How are they going to do it without beloved actors that are no longer with us? And how are they going to do it when the original story was all wrapped up? Like, what are they actually going to do, So that I started getting worried the more I thought about it. So I've seen a few articles about the director of this one, Lee Isaac Chung, and he was saying how much he liked the original movie, and I can respect that, and I actually do, but my problem is it didn't really show up in the movie itself, because aside from the fact that it was in Oklahoma and filmed there, and it's about tornadoes, and it has Dorothy that one time, you'd never have a clue, beyond the title, that it was tied to the original in any way. I mean, until you watched it, then you could tell it was copy, but, that's besides the point. And I was thinking, like, there was plenty of opportunities for them to do so. The Dorothy was used in the beginning was, like, quite literally the only thing tying it to the original. If it wasn't for Dorothy, it would completely be separate in every way. Like, if I were him, I would have at least added, like, some of the original names here somewhere, or, like, have an article slap up on the screen, or that someone mentioned, like, remember all that stuff that happened in the 90s? Or, like, good thing we have all that info from the 1996, big discovery or something. Like, really, anything could have worked there. I think the only other thing we got besides Dorothy was, like, a sticker or something. I think. And then there's just nothing else, nada, zilch, zero. And so besides not name-dropping anyone or mentioning anything from the first one besides, Dorothy, we come to the music situation of things. And let me just say right off the bat that I don't mind the country music. It actually makes a lot of sense, That's, the music of the area right now. Rock and roll was the music of the time itself back then, So it's fine if it's not front and center. But you're telling me they couldn't have put, anything anywhere? They couldn't have had humans being, like, in the background somewhere? They own all the rights to these songs. It's still the same studios. Everything is still owned by them. And that's the last thing I gotta talk about, too, is the original score. So the original score of the first one is just great. That's what I have kind of in the background here. Not too much. I don't want to get in trouble with my first kind of video. But, like, the original one was just really nice. I listened to that a lot. I still listen to it. But this new one, for some reason, they decided to not go with any of the musical, like, motifs or anything from the first one. At all. You know how the original one had, like, electric guitar riffs and stuff in there? Nah, this one doesn't. Well, actually, it has one. There was one spot that this had an electric guitar riff, and it was probably by accident. And, there's, like, one track from this new one that I'll probably listen to. But the rest of it's just honestly forgettable to me. If this had been the soundtrack of almost any other, like, movie this year, really, then yeah, I would have not known that it was supposed to be tied to Twister, like, in any way either. And you know that's pretty bad when even the original score can't have anything to do with the original movie? Like, come on. You could have given us something there, at least. So probably what my biggest problem was the title itself, huh? Because by saying Twisters, you really are implying, you're really pretending that it has something to do with the first movie. Because the only other names like that I can think of is Alien and Aliens. And very obviously, Aliens was a sequel to Alien. I don't have to argue that, I don't have to pretend there. But they had to pretend with Twisters. Why? It's just, you know, if it had been named something else, and we had all these nods and, you know, ooh, remember that? Remember Dorothy? Remember that one sticker or whatever? You know, if we had that in a differently named movie, then probably I would have been better off. Even though the story would have still been a copy-paste. At least they wouldn't have pretended. Because they absolutely pretended this was a sequel and it wasn't. So yeah, I realize I'm like in the extreme minority here because I didn't like it. Well, I did like it, but it disappointed me. And if you say something disappointed you nowadays, then everyone's gonna be like, you hate it. And I don't hate it, you know, that's... I just don't hate it. I was just disappointed, and that's, you know, the same thing these days. So now here's the part where I'm gonna talk about the stuff that I did like. Because I did like it, you know, remember, I gotta keep saying it, otherwise people are gonna think I hate it. So, I was fine with the fact that it was in modern times, you know, I wasn't expecting this to take place in the 90s or like the early 2000s or something. You know, that would have been a little too much to expect out of them. You know, the Corpos having access to some, like, secret new military radar technology is kind of whatever, you know, I didn't really care about that. I'm sure some people might have had a problem with that, but I didn't. Of course, though, the whole subplot with the evil land grab, that was so pointless, like, come on. When I saw that, my eyes were rolling back in my head, but at least it was mercifully short. And then the ragtag group using drones and stuff was really cool because I know that happens in real life. And this is the same with them live streaming it, you know, it's happening in real life, so that's pretty nice that they incorporated that in there. The attitude of the Storm Chasers themselves was also really good, because it wasn't trying to pretend like, you know, the weather is evil and, you know, anything weak like that. You could tell that they were really interested in the tornadoes themselves, but they also wanted to help people out that got, you know, hit by the tornadoes. So, you know, that was pretty nice. Very true to life. And speaking of the weather, I was so glad that there was no climate change anywhere in the movie. I was just waiting for it too. Because it's coming out in the current year, 2024, I was just waiting for them to talk about climate change somewhere. And there was like one vague sentence that like implied it, saying like, oh, it's unprecedented, like tornadoes never happened in, you know, Oklahoma like that. Don't worry though, I know what they're talking about, I'm just kind of being hyperbolic there. And honestly, if they had gone on the like climate change bandwagon, I probably wouldn't have told anyone to bother with it. That would have been it. I'm just so tired of it. I thought the chase vehicle was pretty cool. You know, I appreciate that they went with a Dodge Ram, a red one and an old one. You know, I appreciate it. If they had went with a brand new red Dodge Ram, I still probably would have been alright. That's, you know, the first one was a commercial for Ram, and I kind of half expected this to be a commercial for it too, so, you know. It's fine that it wasn't, you know, but if it was, I would have been actually fine with it, funny enough. Although, it had no, like, skirt on it, so the air can just go straight underneath that. It would have just blown it to Kingdom Come in real life. But whatever, and I'm not nitpicking about that. Just like with the fire tornadoes, like, the fire tornado scene was fine. I saw it in the trailer, and I was like, you know, that would have destabilized the tornado, but, you know, like I said, I'm not nitpicking that kind of thing. I just wanted to see tornadoes and stuff. I wanted to see a continuation of Twister, really, but whatever. And then, them not hooking up at the end, I was fine with too, because they were really not written to be romantically involved with each other. They seemed more like two, like science partners that were really trying to figure out how to, stop a tornado. They were really interested in the science of it all. And then, finally, the other weird thing I have to mention is that I think the visual effects were really, really cool. The CGI was nice on the tornadoes. And you would probably think I wouldn't have to mention something like that, but I mean, I've seen I've seen some stuff that comes out of Hollywood these days, and it has left me lacking. I look back to like Pirates of the Caribbean 2, Davy Jones, and they still can't get people looking that good these days. So yeah, the tornadoes looked good, and I have to say that they looked good, because that's not a given anymore. Oof. Okay, well, that's enough out of me. I recorded this multiple times, and I'm getting up to like 30 minutes in the raw recording. And I didn't think I'd be anywhere near that, so... like I said in the beginning, I kind of had fun drafting the script, and I was going to make stuff eventually about the Amazon's waste of time. About their Amazon's little abomination there. And I will nitpick the hell out of Wheel of Prime. That's gonna be like, Mauler length videos there. I'm cracking the books open, something they didn't want to do. And, I actually totally forgot that Twisters existed until I saw an electronic billboard on the way to work 2 days before it came out. I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot that movie existed, so... I went and saw it that following Monday. And I was like, ugh, man, I'm so disappointed. I was so disappointed. I was like, I probably should make a video. And it's taken me this long just because I've never really made a video. And so, yeah, I know there's probably going to be some people that come here and say, like, oh man, you just hate it. I don't care. I'm like, whatever. Anyways, I'll definitely return to nitpick Amazon's waste of time, and who knows how long that's gonna be in length, and who knows how long it's gonna take for me to make those videos, or whatever.